find your way to 1 Samuel chapter 8, where we've got a great chapter in front of us. And a lot of lessons in this book, a lot of great lessons, biblical principles. And so this is another one, does not disappoint. 1 Samuel chapter 8 continues the story of the book of 1 Samuel, obviously. And Samuel is a prophet. God has revealed him as a prophet. And 1 Samuel chapter 8 is about the people rejecting God. Okay? And so we'll see the steps for that and see what God does about it. The very first main division, so in the event that you are new here, visiting, trying to figure all this out, just so you know, we do have, I do put points on the screen, and if you want to write those down, we do have notebooks and pens also available for you that are in that cabinet over there next to Jolly. So you're always welcome to grab one of those notebooks and pens and you can take some notes. I will have some main divisions, 4 main divisions. This is the first of those main divisions. And we see that there are some wicked leaders here in this chapter. Let's start reading in verse 1 where it says, "Now it came to pass, when Samuel was old, that he made his sons judges over Israel." Now we'll stop there for just a moment so that I can explain a couple of things. Again, Samuel is the prophet, meaning he is God's, the individual that God chose and is using in order to lead the people of Israel spiritually. Okay? Now Samuel's leading them. Well, he's an old guy, and we can assume, I think it's safe to assume, that at this point, because he's old, he decides that he needs somebody else to help him with the work of leading the people. So what does he do in verse 1? He does what a lot of other dads do. He's got 2 sons. He puts them to work as being judges over Israel. Now, to be a judge over Israel meant that you were a leader. We went through the book of Judges a while back. Some of you were here for that. And we saw different types of judges. Some were religious leaders. Some were leaders, but not religious at all. In fact, some of them were wicked. Some were lazy. There were different kinds. Sometimes they actually judged things, meaning this. The word judge in the Bible is used as just to describe a leadership position. So it's not necessarily a judge like we would picture a judge with a black robe and a gavel, to decide court cases. However, the judges sometimes did do that. They would actually decide court cases, and so different. I mean, they could be religious leaders, they could be political leaders, they could also be judging court cases. Well, we're not told in what capacity these 2 sons are really used, but we do know that they're in that position of just being a leader or leaders in Israel. But there was a problem with that. We'll get to that in a moment. But the first thing that we see here, if you are taking notes, we've got our main division, which is wicked leaders. And we see that these leaders are Samuel's sons. Now that might lead us to a conclusion or an assumption. Well, Samuel's a godly man. He therefore must have godly children. But that is not always the case. Look at verse 2. The name of his firstborn was Joel, and the name of his second, Abijah. They were judges in Beersheba. So that's where they mainly were, was in Beersheba, a place called Beersheba, and they were being leaders there. But in verse 3, here's another subpoint for you, and that is that they were sinful. Verse 3 says, "But his sons did not walk in his ways." Now we'll stop there for a moment so I can explain in his ways. What does that mean? Samuel, we've been able to see his entire life, but we're only 8 chapters in. So we haven't seen every aspect of his life, but we've gotten a good picture. We know that his mom was not able to have kids, but then God blessed her and she was able to have kids and she gave birth to Samuel. So we've actually seen Samuel from before he was born, even conceived, before he was conceived. So we've seen him from his birth, and when he was a little tiny kid, he was already serving in the temple, and he was serving with the priest whose name was Eli. And Samuel was just available. Here am I. What do you need is basically what he was saying, or that was his attitude. And so he was willing to serve God, to serve other people. And so when it says that his sons did not walk in his ways, it means that his sons did not follow in his footsteps in that capacity. They were not willing to serve God and to serve other people. Now that's going to become very evident here in just a moment. But we oftentimes think of leaders, godly leaders, as always having godly kids. And oftentimes that is the case, and oftentimes it is not. You may be surprised to find out. I've got 4 kids that are not kids anymore. They're all older. My youngest is 20-something. I can't remember right now. 24, and 25. How old was it? 25. 24. She's going to be 25. Anyways, it's classic dad. It's like, whose birthday? I don't know. Anyways, I've got 4, and my youngest daughter loves the Lord. The other 3, not sure. And that is the truth. I'm being candid with you that not all 4 of my kids are in love with the Lord. One of them is. The other 3 I'm praying for daily. And they're not, calling me from prison or jail or killing people or, drug addicts or any of that stuff. But I can see as a dad and as a spiritual leader that their hearts are not fully surrendered to the Lord. My youngest is. The others are not. So it may be surprising to you. It's like, well, doesn't Pastor Chris always teach Bible studies at home, and isn't his whole family saved? Well, they did get Bible studies all the time growing up, but as they got older and moved out and started doing their own things, they made different decisions. We'll talk some more about that actually as we get down to the bottom of our study. But here, his sons did not walk in his ways. They turned aside, meaning they went astray. And they went after dishonest gain. Dishonest gain. What is that? They took bribes and perverted justice. It means that when they were deciding cases between people. So if Reuben and I had a problem, let's say he was my neighbor, and he and I, we get mad at each other. Maybe he's throwing the football, it goes over the back wall. I go, hey buddy, it's my football now. Sorry, sucker. Right? And he comes over, give me my football back. It's not your football. It's in my yard. We get into an argument. What we would do is we would go to Joel or Abijah in Beersheba, Reuben and I. And we go, fine, let's go talk to the judges. And we would go over to the judges and say, hey, listen, he took my football. And I said, this football was in my backyard. Make our cases. But what I do is, because I'm an old man, I'm older, I have a little bit more money than Reuben, I get there to Joel or to Abijah a little bit early. And I bring some money and I say, hey, come on, make the right decision now. And I pay some money. And Joel and Abijah, they go, okay, and they take that money. Then what they do is, it doesn't matter who was right, who was wrong. They're just going to decide for me because I paid. That's what that means there, is that they were after dishonest gain. They would take bribes and they would pervert justice. Pervert, that's a funny word, isn't it? Because when we think of pervert, or what do we say? We say perv or pervy. We're thinking of in a sexual sense, like, oh, this guy's a pervy. Well, pervert means to make something crooked. So it fits when you think of somebody that's like a perv or a pervy, and you go, oh, that guy's a perv, man. Their mind is crooked, right? Sexually. But there are other ways that things can be perverted. And in this sense, they would pervert justice. So they would cause justice to be crooked. This is something that God is, I actually would say he's extremely concerned about. As you and I continue to study the Bible, we're in 1 Samuel right now, but eventually we will get to the book of Proverbs, probably like 8 or 9 years from now. But anyways, we'll get there one of these days. And in the Proverbs, what you find is there are so many Proverbs in there about justice and not perverting justice, not cheating people, not cheating the poor, not cheating the stranger. There are lots of verses in there about justice. God is very concerned with justice. And justice is a bit of a buzzword today. We have justice warriors, people that are all about justice, which is fine. That's godly, that's fantastic, as long as we're talking about the true sense, biblical justice. And for that, you got to go to the Bible and look at what God was the one that, justice originated with God. So you want to go check with God and say, well, what do you mean by justice? Anyhow, we don't have time to go into all that study. What you and I need to know right now is that these two leaders, Samuel's sons, Joel and Abijah, they were wicked leaders. They were sinful because they were perverting justice, cheating people. And so that's not okay with God, but that's not dealt with here. Maybe it'll be dealt with later on. We'll find out. But what we do turn our attention to is the wanting of a king in verses 4 to 9. Here's what happens. Then all the elders of Israel, that's all the leaders of Israel, gathered together and came to Samuel at Ramah. That's where Samuel lived. So they all gather and they come to Samuel. Here's what they say in verse 5. And said to him, look, you are old. I mean, why they got to tell the old man that? It's like, why you got to point that out? You are old. You are old, and your sons do not walk in your ways. These two leaders that you have appointed, they're not walking in your ways. Now make us a king to judge us like all the nations. Now, under wanting a king, which is our second main division, I put they reject God in verses 4 to 5. You might initially look at that and go, I don't see them rejecting God. They're telling Samuel he's old. His sons are wicked, which he's old and they're wicked. But they're just asking for a king. What's the big deal? Well, I didn't make that up. God himself will say that in just a couple of minutes when we get to it. But let me point a couple of things out here in verse 5. They go from you are old and your sons do not walk in your ways to give us a king so that we can be like everybody else. Let me tell you just briefly what the problem is. There's a couple of different problems with that. They could have handled it differently. It's a genuine concern that Samuel was old. Who's going to take over for him? People get old. Who's taking over? Who's going to be the next leader? That's a great question. It was a genuine concern that Samuel's sons, these two leaders, were sinful, that they were wicked. They weren't following their dad's footsteps. These were wicked guys. So those are two very genuine concerns. They didn't have to jump to give us a king. They could have said, Samuel, we're concerned. You're old. Who's going to take after you? Take the job, the position after you. Who's going to lead us? What has God said? Let's seek the Lord together. Let's pray. We're all gathered up in Ramah. Let's all pray. They didn't do that. They didn't say, Samuel, we understand you're getting old. You need some help. But these two sons of yours, these guys are perverting justice. This is not good. You need to get rid of them. And he could have said, you know what? You're right. Let's get rid of them. And I got to look for some more help. I'm getting old. Okay? They didn't do that. What they did was they saw an opportunity. They say, you're old and your sons are wicked. We want a king. Now, in doing that, what they're doing is they're saying, Samuel, we don't want you to be our leader anymore. And the two sons, they're wicked sons, so I understand. We don't want them to lead us anymore. But where did Samuel come from again? I'm asking somebody in here who's brave enough, who feels wild today, and who can answer. Where did Samuel come from? Who put him in that position? Anybody? Anybody? Emmanuel? God. There you go. Yeah. Wild. See? He answered, got it right. Yeah, it was God. So by rejecting God's leader, this person that God had put in that position, what they really are doing is they're rejecting God. Now, I'm not making that up. God's going to say it. But let me point one last thing out to you here in verse 5 before we go any further. James in the New Testament said this, James 4:4. He was kind of harsh. He says this. He says, adulterers and adulteresses. Do you not know? And when he says adulterers and adulteresses, he's talking about in a spiritual sense. He says, do you not know that friendship with the world is enmity with God? It's hatred with God. Whoever therefore wants to be a friend of the world makes himself an enemy of God. Now, that sounds a little peculiar because John 3:16 says, for God so loved the world. And now he's saying that we shouldn't be a friend of the world. So which is it? Seems to contradict. They seem to contradict one another. Well, it's talking about two different senses. In John 3:16, God so loved the world that what did he do? He sent his only son to die for that world. You see, he loved the world, but he understood that the world was very sinful, that it was wicked, and needed to be saved. Okay, this is in a different sense. When he says that friendship with the world, or who wants to be a friend of the world, what he's talking about is someone who desires to be like everybody else. That's a struggle for us as Christians. It has been since there were Christians. A desire that we have oftentimes to try to be like the world, whether it's the way that we talk, or the music that we listen to, or the things that we watch. And when I say the way that we talk, the language that we use, the things that we watch, the things that we listen to, maybe the way that we dress. All of those are areas where I can find myself desiring to be like the world. Now, what does that mean when it says the world? Do you not know that the friendship with the world, and then in the second part, a friend of the world? In this sense, what it's talking about is what I would describe as the sinful world system. That's just my little definition. Basically, what that does is it describes people that aren't Christians. It's the sinful world system. It's their, the way that they talk, the way that they think, the way that they act, the way that they live, the way that they dress. Everything that they do would be part of that. Sorry, I was pointing to Jolly like, hey, there's somebody behind you. That's what we're talking about there. It's that sinful world system. They're not following God. They're just doing whatever they want to do. Well, here James is saying to want to be like them is not good. So in our text, notice at the end of verse 5, now make us a king to judge us or to lead us like all the nations. You see, the desire there is that they want to be like everybody else around them. That's problematic. It's problematic because all the nations around them that had kings, they were all wicked nations with wicked kings, bad kings. But they're going, man, we want to be just like them and just like them and just like them. Give us a king. Up to this point, Israel has been a theocracy. What is a theocracy? Theocracy means they were led by God. They didn't have a king. They didn't have a president. They had different leaders, but those people were working for God. God was their king. It was a theocracy. Now they're saying, we're done with all of that. We don't want God telling us what to do. We want a king. Give us a king. Now it says in verse 6, but the thing displeased Samuel when they said, give us a king to judge us. So Samuel grabbed his sword and killed everybody. No? Verse 6. So Samuel prayed to the Lord. There's a great response from Samuel. He prays to the Lord. I got a problem, and he prays. Now, this is a great little note for each of us. Samuel doesn't try to fix the problem himself. Samuel prays to the Lord. Essentially what he's saying is, God, you have a problem. this is a prayer that I've prayed many times throughout my life. It's like, God, you've got a problem. Not this past winter camp that we just had a couple of weekends ago, but last year we got here. Everybody's got their gear. Everybody's checked in. We're ready to go. We're waiting for the bus. Where's the bus? Where's the bus? Turns out the bus wasn't coming. Somebody had made a mistake in the scheduling, and the bus company was like, man, we don't have a bus to send. They ended up sending a bus later on. We got a bus to take us up there. But essentially at that point, it's like, what am I going to do? What do I show up, and now the bus company's like, hey, we don't have a bus to send you. What am I going to do? Well, listen, guy, you better show up in your minivan and take us all up to camp. What am I going to do? I have no choice. What I was doing was I just started praying, like, God, you got a problem. We got to get up to camp. These people have paid. We got to get up there, have a good time studying the Bible, games and all this stuff. God, you've got a problem. And sure enough, God figured it out. Well, Samuel's doing the same thing. He goes, okay, these people, they want a king. So what does Samuel do? He goes to God and he starts to pray. Now in verse 7, God actually answers him back. So it says, the Lord said to Samuel in verse 7, heed the voice of the people. What does that mean? God told Samuel, listen to the people. What does that mean? It means give them what they want. Now that sounds appealing initially. You mean just ask God for something, he's just going to give you what you want? I imagine Aladdin. Get the lamp, rub that thing, genie comes out, I get 3 wishes. Get to ask for whatever I want. That's what it seems like here. Is that what's going on? Probably not. Let's find out. He says to him in verse 7, heed the voice of the people in all that they say to you, for they have not rejected you, but they have rejected me, God says, that I should not reign over them. Samuel, it's not that they rejected you, they rejected me. But because you're my person, I'm using you, they want you out of there also. In verse 8, it says, according to all the works which they have done, since the day that I brought them up out of Egypt, even to this day, with which they have forsaken me and served other gods, so they are doing to you also. He's actually saying, you know what? They've always done the same thing, Samuel. They've always disobeyed. They've always lived in disobedience. They've always rejected the leaders that I sent. They're doing the same thing. They haven't rejected you. They rejected me, God says. In verse 9, now therefore, heed their voice. Give them what they want. They want a king, give them a king. However, you shall solemnly forewarn them and show them the behavior of the king who will reign over them. So I love this about God. He says, you know what? I'm going to give you what you want. You want a king? I'm going to give you a king. But just so you know, before I give you a king, I'm going to warn you about the king that you're going to get. And that's exactly what he does in verse 10. Let me put it up there for you. This is our third main division. It's a warning in verses 10 to 18. What I am going to do is read all of verses 10 to 17. We'll come back to verse 18 after, but verses 10 to 17. Let me read this for you. It's a point that I want to make. So Samuel told all the words of the Lord to the people who asked him for a king. And he said, this will be the behavior of the king who will reign over you. He will take your sons and appoint them for his own chariots and to be his horsemen. And some will run before his chariots. He will appoint captains over his thousands and captains over his 50s. He will set some to plow his ground and reap his harvest, and some to make his weapons of war and equipment for his chariots. He will take your daughters to be perfumers, cooks, and bakers. He will take the best of your fields, your vineyards, and your olive groves and give them to his servants. He will take a tenth of your grain and your vintage and give it to his officers and servants. And he will take your male servants, your female servants, your finest young men, and your donkeys, and put them to his work. He will take a tenth of your sheep, and you will be his servants. Now, there was a phrase there that was in those verses 10 to 17, that was repeated 6 times. What was it? Anybody see that in there? What was it? Noah?
You will.
Not you will. Well, I don't know. You will might. You will what, actually?
You will. Sorry,
He will. He will take. He will take. See that? Verse 11. He will take your sons. What's he going to do with them? They're going to tend to his chariots. He'll appoint them for his own chariots to be his horsemen. Some will run before his chariots, so they're going to tend to his chariots. Verse 13, he will take, not only is he going to take your sons, he will take your daughters. They're going to work for him, perfumers, cooks, bakers. Verse 14, he will take the best of your fields, your vineyards, your olive gardens. Just kidding. He's not taking the restaurants. Olive groves, and give them to his servants. You got that? That was funny? Yeah, nobody else thought so, except for Jolly. Did you thought so also? Thank you very much. Thank you, ladies. Did you know that Jolly works at Olive Garden? I know. She said, bring me a gift card. Yeah. You know what? I don't need a gift card. I just need salad and breadsticks. Just endless supply. Anyhow, he's going to take these things. Verse 15, he will take a tenth of your grain. That's what we call what's it called? Yes, it's a tax, but I'm trying to think of my mind just went totally blank. A tenth. Anyways, he's going to take a tenth of your grain, your vintage, your crops. He will take your male servants, your female servants, your finest young men, your donkeys. He's going to put them to work. In verse 17, finally, he will take a tenth of your sheep, and you will be his servants. So what he's saying here is he's giving them a warning. He's saying, you're going to get a king. I'm going to give you what you asked for. However, you're going to have to pay. This is going to be a consuming king. Now listen, there's a contrast that you should be looking for. You will not always be here in the high school room. You will eventually go into the sanctuary. You may go to some other church. It may be a Bible club at school. You've got to ask yourself this question. What kind of leadership do you want? Do you want a leader who takes from you, or a leader who gives? The Bible teaches us that the best kind of leaders, biblical leaders, godly leaders, are what we would call a servant leader. Servant leader. So that's a leader that leads, but primarily he or she serves. In other words, they give. Now notice the contrast here. This person, we're told, is going to take. And that's just a defining character of leaders nowadays. Not good leaders, I just said leaders. Now, I happen to love the United States. I've traveled to other countries. Not a lot, not a ton of other countries, but I've traveled to some other countries. And this is the best country that I've ever been to. But it certainly is far from perfect. That's the truth. And living in beautiful California, I love living here. We got the ocean. We got the beaches. We got the deserts. We've got the fee. What else could you ask for? But we pay a high price. Now, you might not pay a high price if you're working and, you got a job at the Krabby Patty or wherever you work. You get that first check, man. You're so excited for that first. You should have seen my kids when the first time I remember they got their first paycheck. The first thing they said is, why did they take out so much? That was the first thing they said. They weren't looking at how much they made. They're looking at how much they lost. It's like, where did that go? And me, I'm like, you saw your governor's new suit, right? That's it. He took it to buy that new suit. our government, the truth is, the fact is, as great as it might be, they require a lot of us. And it's tax time right now, so even if you don't have a job, you probably have heard your mom and your dad talking about taxes. And it probably wasn't good. It was probably something like, oh, and they'll throw around terms like the state, the federal. Why we got to pay so much? Oh, I got to call the tax person. I got to call the tax guy or the tax lady. Oh, I hate doing the taxes. And they bellyache and complain, about all the money they have to get. It's like, I've been paying all year, now I got to pay more, and that's what governments do. And you can imagine if we live in a great country like this, and that's happening to us, imagine what happens in so many other countries where leadership and government is even, not as good as this. This happens all over the world. But that's what Noah mentioned, the word tax. That's what all of this is. Essentially, what he's doing is he's warning them, you want a king. I'm going to give you a king. You're going to get a king. But that king is going to take from you. Your sons, your daughters, your servants, the best of your fields, your crops, everything that you have, this king is going to take it. And he's not going to take all of it, but he's going to take a lot of it. And that's what you asked for. Now, where is the application for you and I right now? We have some more chapter to finish, but let me just say this before we leave this section. What does this mean for you? You go, well, you know what? I'm not working, so what do I care? I'm not concerned with this stuff. There is some spiritual application here. Sometimes we get practical application, just like, okay, you need to do this, in your life, these things on the daily. Sometimes we get spiritual application like we do here. Because we don't have a king that we're giving our sons and daughters to, and chariots and all this. So we might go, what perfumers? I mean, what is this? Here's the application. The application is this: that the people, they didn't want to be under God's leadership. So they decide we don't want God to lead us. We want a king to lead us. I showed you a verse a moment ago from James, being friendly with the world. Here's the point. The point is that when you and I decide that we do not want to live in obedience to God, we want to do our own thing, we want to hang out with our homies, with our posse, with our crew, with our homegirls, we just want to do our own thing, we don't want to live in obedience to the Lord, God will let you do that. But you need to understand there's a price that will be required of you. Now, if you do not believe me, then I would tell you to look at just as an example, it's just one example, look at our homeless population. Now, you all live in the fee, or most of you live in the fee, so you don't see a lot of homeless people. But you don't have to go very far to see homeless people. And since we all live in California, you've seen homeless people. And you might go, well, what does that have to do with this? Generally speaking, not every single person, and I have had jobs where I work directly with homeless people. Not every single one of them, but generally speaking, homeless people are people that at some point in their life decided that they did not want to live in obedience to God or anybody else. They just wanted to do their own thing. And they wanted to party it up. And they wanted to drink whenever they wanted to drink, and smoke whenever they wanted to smoke, and do some drugs whenever they wanted to do some drugs, and go out and stay out and not answer to anybody. And that required something of them. And it took, and it took, and it took, and it took from them. The way this king was going to consume, that's what happens when we go chasing all of that stuff. It's going to require something from us. And just yesterday, I was going into AutoZone, and there was a woman outside. She was out at the street, and back in the old days, they used to have these things called newspapers, and they would have these metal boxes, and they would put the newspapers in there, and you put a quarter in there, lift up the door, pull out a newspaper, or close it. Well, they're all empty now, but there was one there on the sidewalk that just there, and this lady was out there screaming at the box with a log in her hand, banging the box, just bam, 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 screaming at it. And then I watched her take off running to her pile of blankets in front of this little tattoo shop, and then from there, she took off running down Baseline. Now, I do not know the lady. No doubt she's got a story that she probably can never remember. She was out of her mind, obviously. But I've seen tons of people like that over the years who have made choices in their past, and those choices were fun for a little while, but there were things that were required of them, and it stripped away and stripped away and stripped away and stripped away and stripped away until one day they find themselves out on the streets, homeless, loco in the cocoa, gone, never to return. And I've seen tons of people like that. I've known some of them personally. I could still, 25 years ago, Brian and Charles and Sandy, this threesome, they used to hang out, homeless people, and they were pretty young. And once in a while, they would come to the recycling place that I worked at, and they would want to recycle, and they were super sweet people, but they were just out there, drugs and alcohol and sex and just whatever they wanted to do, out there living on the streets. And I can remember sometimes their parents would show up. You go, wait, they had parents? Yeah, their parents would show up. I remember, hey, pull up and like, hey, have you seen Brian and Sandy? No, not today, or they were here earlier. Whatever. Okay, well, listen, if they come by, just tell them that his dad came by. I was going to take him to breakfast. What? You like, well, they have parents. Why aren't they home? They didn't want to be. That's the whole point. They made choices. They didn't want to live like that. They didn't want to do what God wanted them to do. So what did it get them? It stripped them until they were out living on the streets, sleeping in fields, and, just gone. That's the point here. This king is going to take and take. You want to be like everybody else? Okay, you're going to be like everybody else, but they're going to take from you. It's going to require something from you. What we want is a relationship with the Lord, where the Lord, instead of taking, is imparting or giving. Now, notice in verse 18, after they get this king, this consuming king, they are going to be a complaining people. Verse 18, and you will cry out in that day because of your king, whom you have chosen for yourselves, and the Lord will not hear you in that day. Too late. Too bad. You asked for it. You got it. Now the last section, verses 19 to 22, is whining. Verse 19, nevertheless, the people refused to obey. Whining. They refused to obey the voice of Samuel. And they said, no, but we will have a king over us. There's the whining. But what did they do? They refused to obey. We don't care what you tell us. We want a king. We want a king. We want a king. Verse 20, why do they want a king? That we also may be like all the nations. We just want to be like everybody else. And that our king may judge us and go out before us and fight our battle. We want a king like everybody else to lead us. And Samuel heard all the words of the people, and he repeated them in the hearing of the Lord. So the Lord said to Samuel, heed their voice. Make them a king. Listen to them. Give them a king. And Samuel said to the men of Israel, every man go to his city. In other words, we're done. Everybody go back home. God's going to give you what you want. I didn't put it on the screen, but you can write it down if you want and look it up later. I'll read it for you. Psalm 37, verses 4 and 5 are in contrast to what we've just read. Because it says in Psalm 37, verses 4 and 5, delight yourself also in the Lord, and he shall give you the desires of your heart. Commit your way to the Lord. Trust also in him, and he shall bring it to pass. Wonderful verses. Let me read it for you one more time. Delight yourself also in the Lord, and he shall give you the desires of your heart. Commit your way to the Lord. Trust also in him, and he shall bring it to pass. What is that telling us? It's telling us to do the opposite of what we see the people doing here. Now, they're going to get a king, the first king of Israel. His name's going to be Saul, and he will be a bad king. What we can do is we can make a choice and say, I want God to lead me, or I don't want God to lead me. I want to do my own thing. Now, I've been in ministry now. I've been involved in church work for almost 30 years. Mostly youth, but I've worked with adults too, which is just no fun. It's way better to be with the youth. But I've seen all ages, all age levels. Let me share something with you. I'm not trying to be discouraging. It's a fact. It's just a fact. I see it every single year because I'm involved in youth ministry. Every single year I see it. And this year will be no different. I see students that are involved in high school ministry, and they're around, and they go to the events, and they're always at church, and they're just there, and they're like, okay, yeah, this person, they're a Christian, they're always there. And then I see some of those people, not all of them, but some of those people end up, as time goes on, they start to disappear, and maybe they stop showing up. They might go in the sanctuary, fantastic. I hear that there's a pretty good Bible teacher in the sanctuary. So, that's not a bad choice, but they'll do that. But then some of them will start to disappear, and some of them after graduation, they're just gone. They're just gone. They do not walk in his ways. They walk in their own ways. They do their own thing. I see it every year. Every year. So what am I saying? I'm saying this, that the people that are around you right now, not all of them are going to continue following the Lord. And that might seem crazy. Like, what are you talking about? They're here, like they're in church. Let me say something. I don't want you to raise your hand. I don't know. Your parents didn't call me this morning, okay? So just so you know. But some of us this morning and every Sunday morning, we have to be shaken out of our beds. Like, let's go, come on, let's go. We're leaving in 20 minutes. Let's go. We got to get to church. And some of us have to be dragged out of bed in order to be here right now. I don't know. I mean, I'm only speaking to you from experience. I know some of you are not excited about being here right now. Not everybody loves being at church. Some of us are here because parents are making you. Let's go. Come on. We go to church. Get up. Let's roll. And some of us, when that ends, when we're at an age where our parents are no longer telling us, making us, requiring or keeping us in check, we'll start to make our own decisions. And the decision will be, I'm not going to church. I mean, I know I should, but man, I was up late last night trying to hit the boss level, try to learn a new TikTok dance. I mean, God will forgive me. I don't have to go to church. And we'll start to make excuses, and we'll stop showing up, and we'll stop following the Lord. I'm not saying something that I haven't seen over the last 30 years. It happens every single year for the last 30 years. It's happened. That's what we naturally do. Some people, they just go astray. They stop walking in his ways. We don't want to do that. What you and I want to do is decide, no, I'm going to be committed to the Lord, man. I'm going to stay locked in on the Lord. I'm not going anywhere. What I'm going to do is what Psalm 37 says, delight yourself also in the Lord, and he shall give you the desires of your heart. So I'm going to delight myself in God and let him give me the desires of my heart. I'm going to commit my way to the Lord. I'm going to trust in him and let him bring it all to pass. I'm going to commit myself to the Lord. That's where you and I want to be, locked into that, right? That's where we want to be. Not deciding, you know what, I don't want, man, I had to live, I do that God thing all, till I got to be, high school. Like, I'm tired. I just want to do my own thing. You can do your own thing. Some of you will choose to do that. Some of you will not be around a year from now. You won't be here because you're going to decide you're going to do your own thing. That's just the truth. I'm just warning you ahead of time the way God and Samuel warned these people. You're going to make choices. You're going to choose your own thing. You're going to choose, I don't want to live for God anymore. And you can do that, but I'm telling you, it's going to require things from you. It's going to take from you. And sometimes you might feel like, being a Christian, man, it's like such a bummer, man. It's a drag. I got to go to church. I can't listen to the music that I want to listen to at home because my parents make me turn it off, or then won't let me watch these movies that my friends are watching because, it's got this just junk in it. And, man, it's just a drag. And you know what? I don't want to live like that anymore. I want to do my own thing. I just want to be like all the rest of my friends. Same thing. Give us a king. We don't want to follow the Lord. Give us a king. We want to be like everybody else. And they paid the price. They paid the price. And there was rarely in the history of Israel, and we'll see it, rarely was there ever a good king. Rarely. The majority of the kings consumed, took, ripped the people off. It was a mess. They could have just decided, let's just stick with the Lord. No. Wasn't good enough. We want to be like everybody else. So heed the warning. All I can do is give you the warning. That's all I can do. I'm just giving you the warning. That the temptation is going to come. You're going to have a choice to decide which way you want to go. You're either going to follow in his ways or you're not going to follow in his ways. And if you follow in his ways, there is a price to pay. That's true. I do have to live in obedience to him. But if I don't follow in his ways, it's going to strip you bare until you decide, forget this, man. I need to go. The Lord allows U-turns. I just need to go back and I need to get locked into the Lord. But if you stay there, then you won't have to go down that way and experience all of that. You can just stay locked into the Lord. That's what we want. Father, we are so very thankful for your word.